Check 1 2 1 2.
Well, we can hear it out here. We can't hear it out here. Only in the headphones.
I can turn it down. Check 1 2 1 2.
Okay, now I hear. Hello, hello. Can you hear me? I can't hear. Hello, hello, hello. Oh, no, I hear. Okay,
Yeah,
so it has to be up really high.
not really high, but like about like right there. That's like mid volume.
Okay.
So you want to keep it at a good.
Okay, that's on Facebook. Okay. We have to apologize for our testing live. Okay. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Natural Parenting Talk with Lauren and Kima here on Fishbowl Radio in the Green Stream and showing simultaneously on Facebook Live on our page, Natural Parenting Talk with Lauren and Kima. Natural Parenting Talk with Lauren and Kima is all about natural parenting, natural living, and a whole lot
A
extra.
whole lot.
And of course, we are your hosts, Lauren and Kima.
Woohoo.
Today's subject is about Black infant mortality, Black maternal morbidity, and Black breastfeeding. Our special guests today are Lindell Singleton and Ryan Singleton, and it seems we're having a family theme the last few weeks. We've had a couple mother-daughter teams. Of course, we're a mother-daughter team, so we're happy to welcome a father-son team here on the show.
Welcome.
Glad to be here.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
And as always, before we dive into today's topic, we want to spend some time on our weekly segment, What's Happening? If you have an opinion about the topic, feel free to call in at 214 431 5032 or add your thoughts in the comments on Facebook Live. So this past weekend, we had the Big Latch On, which is a great event that helps to raise awareness for breastfeeding in an effort to normalize it and that kind of thing. We had just a really great turnout. It was a whole lot of fun just to see all the moms come together and, celebrate breastfeeding. And of course, we had giveaways like we always do. So just a really fun event. So we want to thank everybody that was able to come out to the event and those who were able to participate virtually, because I know there were several people that posted pictures and sent us pictures, participating that way.
And we had 17 latches, which is a big deal.
Yeah. So yeah, it was a great event, and we also want to remind you that Black Breastfeeding Week is coming up, and that will be the last week in August, which will be August 25th through the 31st, and we're going to have a lot of events at Crunchy Boutique to celebrate Black Breastfeeding Week, and to hopefully get bring awareness not only to breastfeeding but for Black breastfeeding as well. We're going to have an event called our Chocolate Milk and Cookies event and breastfeeding party that will be on August 31st, where breastfeeding mamas can come together and try just really yummy lactation treats, cookies, brownies, things like that. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So make sure you look out
We'll
on.
also have a photographer there
Yes.
who will be taking individual breastfeeding photos, and then we'll take a large group breastfeeding photo at the end.
Yeah, so it's going to be just a great week, great for celebrating and all of that. So that is what's happening this week.
Okay, and now, as Lauren said, we are here with Lindell Singleton and Ryan Singleton. Lindell, a product of South Los Angeles, like me, attended Los Angeles City College, UCLA, and the Film TV Directing Program at Hollywood Film Institute. His degree is in art. Currently, he is Chief Content Architect and an Executive Producer at Media 13 Studios. Recently, Lindell's feature-length documentary, Lone Star Holy War, which he wrote and directed, premiered at Dallas International Film Festival. As a director, producer, and published author, Lindell is developing The Gap, an 8-part documentary series about Black infant mortality and Black maternal morbidity. Along with his son, writer-photographer Ryan Singleton, who's also here today, the two are developing a series entitled Birthright, Black Mamas, Black Dads, and Breastfeeding. This series is about to begin casting and pre-production. Ryan is the story producer for this important series. Lindell, a recipient of the 2017 Humanitarian of the Year Award by Justice Seekers Texas, continues to assert that the power of visual storytelling distributed through film and television can be leveraged as a tool to create and sustain virtuous social change. That's a mouthful. Again, welcome Lindell and Ryan. Thank you so
Yes,
much for
thank
being
you so
here.
much.
We are so excited to have you here, kicking off Breastfeeding Month. I'm sorry, and just all those topics. So your topics definitely tie into everything that we're talking about. So without further ado, we want to just dig right in with giving you an opportunity to tell us about your project, The Gap, and we'll ask lots of questions. I'm sure we've got a lot of people who have already logged in on Facebook Live, so I'm sure we'll have lots of questions and interaction.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess with that, I should kick this off. Would you say so?
Yes, definitely.
All right. I'll give you a bit of the backstory, and then we'll you guys just kind of jump in at any time with any questions or any comments that you might have. I'll tell you how we got on this journey. It's peculiar, actually. We shot a film, and my partners and I shot a film called The Valedictorian. And The Valedictorian was a piece that we made to shine the light on the fact that Black boys and Hispanic boys between the ages of 5 and 14 are by and large the poster children for asthma in Dallas County. And we were stunned by the impact that asthma has on Black boys and the fact that it is ubiquitous, it is prevalent. And this film went on and won some awards and and all that. But what it led us to was to examine health data around North Texas. And we stumbled upon a report from United Way. And United Way does a great job at parsing data by county on health-related issues. And we stumbled on data about Black infant mortality. And the gist of the data, Lauren and Kima, is that Black infants are dying at a rate of 2 to 1 compared to Caucasian infants. Now,
Wow.
so the thing about infant mortality, the reason that infant mortality is important, first let me tell you how it's defined. The experts define infant mortality as any baby that is born viable but dies before his or her first birthday. And when you look at the numbers, 2 to 1 comparison, Black babies and Caucasian babies who don't make it to their first birthday, I was examining those numbers and I thought, this has to be a public health crisis. I mean, people have to know. How come no one knows about this?
Exactly.
How come I didn't know about
Right,
this?
mhm.
As a Black man, why didn't I know about this? Why didn't I realize that? So I called someone in the people who organize the metrics or all this data, and I'm like, listen, you got like a misprint in your data, because it says here that Caucasian babies, the infant mortality rate for Caucasian babies is about 5 or so for every 1,000 live births, but for African American babies, it's about 12, 13. Like,
Wow.
whoa, my goodness, no, this can't be right. And the lady I spoke to says, no, that is exactly right. So, as a person, Ryan will tell you, as someone who has OCD, I became
Yes.
yeah, he knows all the things running around in my head.
Get a little bit closer to the mic.
Absolutely. So I started this quest to get to the bottom of why does this gap exist? This 2-to-1 gap exists between Black infant mortality and Caucasian infant mortality. And we were able to go back as far as the 1890 census. And one of the things that struck us is that the gap between Black infants dying and Caucasian infants dying has always been at a rate of 2-to-1 or higher.
Always.
Now, if you go back to 1890s, it was 150 white babies dying for every 1,000 live births, but it was 300 Black babies that were dying. And even though over time, through enhancements in medical technique and availability of technology, access to healthcare, you know, certainly the numbers have been driven down since 1890, but the 2-to-1 gap
Remains the same.
it remains the same.
Wow.
And that to me became a stunning piece of information that I felt that we had to get to the bottom of this. We had to figure out, why does this gap exist? Why is it persistent? And why is it not being talked about in a way that can move people toward action to be
Right.
able to deal with this? And along that line, along our path, along our series development path, research for the scripting and such, we found documents from the Crisis magazine. And the Crisis magazine was the national organ for the NAACP, founded, of course, by W.E.B. Du Bois. And what we found is that issues regarding Negro infant mortality were being discussed and written about in the 1920s and 1930s. So that issue was on the minds of folks back then. But consistently, there's nothing that's been done to close the gap. Yes, it's good that that 125 Black babies for every 1,000 births aren't dying, but why does the persistent gap 2-to-1? Why does that exist? And frankly, there's other counties in the United States where we found the numbers weren't 2-to-1; they were 5-to-1,
Wow.
10-to-1. We found one county where it's 18-to-1, and this is significant for all of us, because infant mortality, along with life expectancy, are the ways that medical experts determine the health level of any society. So if you are in a situation where your life expectancy is 10 to 12 years shorter, and your infant mortality statistics are 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 higher, then how over time do those metrics balance out? And what's the long-term impact of that on a society and on a group of people? So that's kind of how we got to this point to start developing the series. That's the research aspect of it. But does that kind of give you a flavor for
It
how it
does.
began?
Yeah.
No, we know that, as you said, people have been aware of this issue for some time, and I know there have been other groups that have talked about it, and people take up this issue, particularly this month. We're seeing a lot of conversations about the disparity there, and with Black breastfeeding as well. But from your perspective, your goal then is to shine a light in a different way, because you want to create this documentary that will hopefully get some attention and get people maybe to act.
Well, that's a great question, Kima, and that's very, very well stated. I would say that the power of film and television and visual storytelling in our society is pervasive and it is ubiquitous. The art form since really 1915 is the most dominant art form in the history of mankind. It is how you reach people. It is where people are. So we chose that because, number one, that's how you reach people, but number two, this is what we do. I mean, I can't as Ryan will tell you, I can't go to Home Depot or Lowe's or build you anything. I can't do anything like that. I don't have any skills like that. But but I got to tell you, I know how to make movies. I know how to make television. I know how to tell stories.
Yes, he does.
And that piece of it, thanks, son. I appreciate you. And that piece of it is why we chose to go down this path. But our goal really is to stimulate people to want to do more, to stimulate people and inspire African Americans and other folks to want to understand, A, that this exists, and B, what are the kinds of things that we are going to be able to do about this. And it is our belief, we assert, that this has to begin with a robust dialogue that says, this is the world that exists now. And once we can frame that, this is where the world that exists now, we can start doing things to move this towards some level of resolution.
Right.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the documentary series. You said it's 8 parts. So what are the 8 parts?
What are the 8 parts? That is a great question.
Which I'm sure you're ready for.
Of course I'm ready for. I'm from South Central LA, man. I went to Bret Hart Junior High School, so I was born ready, man. Love my middle school, Bret Hart, even though that was a long time ago. Which where that is, Kima, because
Yes,
you're from
I
South
do.
Central LA as well,
Yes,
down
I
there on
am.
93rd and Hoover.
48th and Broadway.
That's right, man.
All right.
Not like them LA folks. But here are the series titles, and I'm going to just go through these really quickly, and then I'll come back in and we can just kind of deal more specifically or drill down in terms of granularity. Episode 1 is titled Like Sugar and Molasses. Episode 2, Access Denied. Episode 3, there's a ticking sound in my head. Episode 4, Rizpa's Choice. Episode 5, The Game of Hunger. Episode 6, Across the Tracks and the Unholy Trinity. Episode 7, Prolong My Days. Episode 8, Lamplight. And each one of those episodes deals thematically and categorically with one or more of the factors that are kind of tied to the issue of black infant mortality and maternal morbidity. We wanted to start with Like Sugar and Molasses. And I have a book here. And this book, I'll just be very candid with you. You should have this book in your library. Now, the cameras are up there. Hopefully folks can see this title. I'm holding it up. Hopefully the shot's wide enough to be able to get it. The title of this book is An American Health Dilemma, Race, Medicine, and Healthcare in the United States from 1900 to 2000. It was written by a black man and his wife, Dr. W. Michael Bird and Dr. Linda Clayton. And this is an exhaustive study that presents the story of the connection in the United States of America between African Americans and the healthcare system. Finding this book was as if we happened upon the Holy Grail. We found the Rosetta Stone because the exhaustive research that this couple did, it framed everything up for us so that we could understand why this is the way that it is.
Okay.
And we're starting the series with Like Sugar and Molasses because we want to take a step back and we want to look at the nature of healthcare for African Americans in the United States that traces even back to pre-slavery time. And we arrived at the title Like Sugar and Molasses because I happened upon a document, a letter actually, and it was either written by Alexis de Tocqueville, who, as you guys know, he came to the United States and went around and the country and wrote a lot back to European nations about this is what life is like in the New World America. And one of those letters, I found a quote, and the quote, it struck me and it equally hurt me because the quote was, "They trade the Negro infants like sugar and molasses." So you've got your donkeys, you've got your sugar, you've got your molasses, you've got your Negro babies, you've got your pigs, you've got your wheat.
Wow.
And all of those,
How much for that Negro?
all of those things were just tossed in together. And it struck me that, man, nobody was caring about Negro babies back then. They were just traded, just stuff, a commodity.
Right.
And there was some concern about healthcare, medical treatment for African Americans during slavery because, of course, the black people represented a free labor force. So you had to have
And their wealth.
and their wealth. So there had to be some modicum of concern about their health because, I mean, for God's sake, you have to work these people from sun up to sundown and all day on Saturday. And, I mean, the cotton has to be picked, you know, the corn, the sugar has to be hard. We got to have all
Right.
these things done. So
Right.
there has to be some level of concern. But what you find is that is after the Emancipation Proclamation, after the end of slavery, you know, during that 7-year period, really before the, before the election of Rutherford B. Hayes, which really changed everything in this country, what you find is that the healthcare, the opportunities for healthcare for African Americans actually became worse after slavery because after then there was nobody that owned you and there was nobody that had any vested interest in whether you were healthy or not.
Right.
So there weren't black nurses, there weren't black doctors, there weren't black medical schools. You were just kind of out there. So that period of time post-slavery is when you see a significant drop, if you will, in the quality of health for African Americans. It just kind of continued to tear downward.
Right.
And, and our assertion is that it was that period of time where it really became at a place where it's almost impossible to recover from. And it was the black infants that suffered, obviously, that suffered the most. And the second piece, too, I want to mention this parenthetically. We shot a film 2 years ago entitled Facing East. And the film was about an abandoned slave cemetery that the Denton County chairman of the NAACP found, if you will, found the cemetery in Denton County. It had been abandoned for 20 years. But in this cemetery, there was probably 450 graves. And anyway, long story short, I made a film about it. It got cleaned up, and it ended up with a positive story. But what struck me when I went up there to Denton County, look at the cemetery, was the number of graves of infants. And there were no headstones for the infants. It was only like a rock. And every rock that we found in this cemetery, the name of it is St. John Cemetery, every rock represented an infant that didn't make it to his first birthday. And that just struck me, the number of rocks that were there. So I was working on this kind of around that time, and I had this thing with St. John Cemetery kind of rummaging around in my head. And I was thinking about the history of all this, and it just kind of all kind of coalesced for me. And that's kind of what became the tableau, if you will, for episode 1, like Sugar and Molasses.
Okay.
So,
Wow.
anyway, so episode 2, it's called Excess Denied, and one of the factors that's tied to black infant mortality is respectful prenatal care and access to prenatal care. And again, man, we are not doctors or social scientists or theologians or any of that. We're just people that know how to tell stories with a camera, and we know how to dig and find truth.
Right.
And we want to galvanize that truth around visual storytelling. So episode 2, and just in the discussion with people in the medical industry and people that get stuff from the medical industry, we encountered lots of young women that had stories about how they were treated when they went to seek care.
Excuse me, I need to
Yeah.
interrupt you for
Yeah.
a moment. We've got a caller calling in.
Yeah.
Hello, caller, are you there? Are you there? Hello? Okay, we may have lost. Okay, I think
They'll
we
call
lost
back
the
if
caller.
it's-
Hopefully, call back.
Yeah.
Okay, I apologize.
Oh, should I continue?
Yes, please.
All right. So just the issue of access to quality, respectful prenatal care. Some of the startling things that we found is that, living here in the Metroplex area, you don't really have to go that far to get medical care, although there could be some transportation issues because there's not a ubiquity of public transportation. There's certainly not like, in Los Angeles or the larger East Coast cities. But when you start getting into different states that are more rural, you could be 50, 75, 100 miles away from being able to get to a clinic. And how does that, and if you don't have transportation, reliable, regular transportation, how do you deal with the issue of prenatal visits and prenatal care. How do you kind of get that sorted out?
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the factors that we've uncovered that's certainly linked to infant mortality and maternal morbidity. Should I continue or just
Yes,
kinda go?
yeah.
Okay. All right. The other piece, the next episode 3, is something that until we begin to look at the research, frankly, I never thought about it because I'm certainly not the sharpest knife in the drawer. But the title of that episode is "There's a ticking sound in my head."
And when you said that the first time, I thought you really meant that.
No, I knew it was the
Yeah,
title.
When you said that, I looked around like, really? What's
Yeah.
going
No.
on?
Mic
shake, mic shake.
Yeah, there's a ticking sound in my head, and one of the things that, again, just in the conversation and research that we've done for this, is just how many women who become pregnant all of a sudden, if they don't have a support system or somebody around them, maybe they don't have a partner or not married or whatever, they have a sense of abandonment and depression sets in. And there are these in the mental journey that they have to go on, and the sense of, I'm having to face this alone, this child and myself. It leads to issues that have short and long-term effect on the mom and on the baby. And we want to deal with that in episode 3 in the show, just the emotional pain that comes when you really feel like you don't have any level of support.
Okay. Now I'm going to interrupt you again.
Cool.
Caller, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
We're having to adjust our volume here a
Oh,
little
man.
bit.
I'm sorry. This
That's
is
all
Jay.
right.
No, it's us.
Yeah,
I
that's-
apologize.
That's okay.
Thank you for calling in. Who are you? Can you announce yourself?
This is Jay. Is Lynn there?
Liddell.
Yes, he is.
Okay, great. I was calling in. I missed a little bit. I apologize for calling in a little late,
No, it's okay.
but I'm here.
Welcome.
Okay. Thank you for having me.
Did you have a question?
I missed what Lynn had mentioned earlier, so could he repeat it?
Yeah, just how you doing? Thanks for calling, Dr. Hall. Thanks for calling in. Dr. Hall is doing really seminal work in the area of cognitive bias, and one of the things that he is doing is that he is linking the relationship that happens in a community between the community and between the police in that community. He's linking that to issues of black infant mortality, and also issues surrounding the sense of emotional abandonment and depression that often occurs. Actually, this was timely when you called in.
Oh, okay. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
We want you to hold on for a little bit. It is time for us to take a break. So
Okay.
we're gonna take a
We're going to take a short break. And just a reminder for the folks listening on Facebook, you should hear silence due to copyright issues with Facebook. Like I said, you should hear silence during this break. We'll be back in just a few minutes.
Great.
Okay, so it's live.
Welcome back to Natural Parenting Talk with Lauren and Kima. We are here with Lindell Singleton and Ryan Singleton to discuss their project, The Gap, which is an 8-part documentary series about Black infant mortality and Black maternal morbidity. And we have a caller on the line, Dr. Hall, and I believe we wanted to ask a question regarding today's topic.
Yes, Dr. Hall, if you could just in maybe 30 seconds or so, just tell us how your work ties into what the Singletons are doing.
Well, what Lynn and Ryan are doing, it's all related to the systemic conditions that both citizens and police deal with. One of the issues that we're not addressing is the overall systemic conditions that individuals have to live under in terms of quality of life deficiencies. So when you look at law enforcement, police officers and citizens alike, they deal with a lot of elevated stress levels where cortisones are being, released, and basically there's nowhere for these cortisones to go. Sometimes that can be interpreted as more aggressive behavior. Sometimes it can be reasons why we have this, law enforcement has this warrior type mentality. And so when I look at neuroscience, that is a way of using scientific medical research to be able to detect racial biases, cortisone levels, stress levels, stereotypic views, even things such as, do you have a ability to have, empathy for another human being? All those type of things are related to what police officers do and what citizens undertake on a day-to-day basis. So that's what I'm trying to tie into some of the same things that Lynn is talking about.
Okay, and so from your perspective, how are you tying them? How are you tying them into? Are you tying them into The Gap?
Oh, absolutely.
Well,
did you want me to respond?
I'm sorry,
Yes,
go
please.
ahead.
I'm sorry. You didn't realize I was looking at Lindell.
Yeah.
I was asking that question. I apologize.
Yeah, actually, Dr. Hall is really just doing seminal work in the area of neuroscience, and as I was talking about before he called in, actually, is there's an emotional piece to this in the lives of moms that have an impact on the mom and also have an impact on the developing baby. And stress is a significant part of this. And as Dr. Hall pointed out, the situation in which you live, the neighborhood in which you live, the relationship in that neighborhood between yourself and people around you, and the authorities, the government bodies, the police force, all those things can affect moms emotionally. And any items, any factors that cause stress in the mom is going to have an adverse impact on the mom and potentially the child. So Dr. Hall's work, I appreciate his work in terms of helping us to understand the connection between the two.
Oh, okay. Very interesting.
So you're saying like stress can be passed down from the mother to the child in the womb?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Can I
Sure.
chime in on that?
Absolutely.
Yes, neuroscientists, part of their research indicates if you looked at a study of the Holocaust, it shows that parents, where we used to think that DNA was just passed down, now we know through neuroscience that some of the emotional and psychological dysfunctional areas that we harbor as a result of our experiences is also transferable to our children. So this is very important that we get this out and kind of, I would say, look back at the systemic conditions, because a lot of times we are spending money in areas but we're not putting them in the right areas to correct the systemic condition. So we have this cycle, this negative spiral that continues to repeat itself.
Very interesting. Well, thank you so much for calling in. Please continue to listen in. We appreciate having you.
Thank you.
So I thank you, Dr. Hall.
Thanks,
Thank you for
Doctor.
the work you're doing.
Bye.
Okay, thank you so much. We'll talk later.
All righty.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so you were going through the 8 parts, and I think we got to part number 3, right?
Yes, indeed. And
Okay.
he called in like right on cue. So
Okay.
good job. Good job. Episode 4 is, and this is for those of you that, grew up going to Sunday school, kind of like I
Like me.
did. In Church of God in Christ, going to church every time the door opens, and Sunday school, of course, was a big part of that. Well, there's a story in the Old Testament about a mom who was faced with the death of her sons. And the story is at once tragic and poignant. And the woman's name was Rizpah, and there was a change in political leadership. And, and back then, whenever there was a change in the monarchy, if you had any claim to the throne, you were killed.
Right.
And Rizpah's sons were hanged. And she spent 3 months, as the Old Testament story goes, living underneath the trees where her sons were hanging to prevent the birds and wild animals from destroying her son's body and her son's bodies. And that story it always struck me, and it just shows the intense level and commitment that mothers have to their children. I was always blown away by this story. So episode 4, we're going to get into what CDC, Center for Disease Control, and all the rest of the experts deem as the preeminent factor for this, and that is preterm births. Why are so many African American babies born preterm?
Right.
The numbers will indicate could be as high as 82. Some numbers indicate it's like around 60, 65% of African American babies that are born preterm. Now, the people in the profession, the experts, the knowledgeable ones about this, they define preterm births as any baby that is born before 39 weeks. And our research has indicated that there's a significant amount of brain development that occurs in those last 4 to 5 weeks before you get to the 40th week delivery. And why are there so many African American infants that are born preterm? So we want to get to that. We want to get to the core of that, because we assert, or at least our research indicates, that if we can begin to ameliorate the factors surrounding preterm births, we can begin to make a dent in this issue over the long term. So episode 4 is uniquely going to deal with preterm births.
Okay.
Episode 5, we've titled that episode "Game of Hunger," and our research again indicated that for many moms, some live in food deserts where there's, even if you want to have fresh, nutritious food, there's nowhere to go to get it. Nakia Lawson, who has been just instrumental in helping, and you guys know Nakia, obviously, of
Hey, Nakia.
the Natural Way Birthing Project. She has been very instrumental in helping us kind of contextualize a lot of the data, a lot of the information. And she was working with a group in over in Mississippi, and one of the community members there, the doulas there, they were saying that these moms live in a community where there's only like a convenience store that has ostensibly junk food in it, and there's no place to go and get anything that a pregnant mom and a developing baby would need to be viable and to be sustained. So we're convinced that we have to if we're going to make a dent in black infant mortality and maternal morbidity, we have to face the issue of nutrition head on.
Mm-hmm.
We have to face the issue of malnutrition. I guess that is the proper way for me to say it. We have to look at the impact that malnourishment has on pregnancies,
Right.
and begin to look at ways that we can fix, that we can resolve that. So that's episode 5.
Okay.
Episode 6, we're calling episode 6 the Unholy Trinity. And again, our research with the physicians, it nails the unholy trinity as preeclampsia and gestational diabetes and hypertension.
Wow. Yeah.
And
Very common.
Mm-hmm.
very common. And here's the thing, they're common in many pregnancies, but in African American women, they're killing folk.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to kind of widen the camera lens, and in this episode, just really get into this unholy trinity and look at the causes of it, the impact of it, and why there's so many black moms and black infants that are dying as a result of this. So that's where we are with episode 6.
Mm-hmm.
Episode 7, working title for that is Prolong My Days. And one of the pieces of information that we have just, again, in our research is that, in Texas, for example, African American moms make up 11% of birthing moms, but really about 36% of the maternal deaths. And any way you parse the data, it's out of whack. It doesn't make any
It doesn't make
sense.
It doesn't make sense.
So, we titled this episode Prolong My Days, and we're going to dig into the issue of maternal deaths and maternal morbidity and prolong my days, and seek to drive a stake in the ground and to determine why is this happening. And the last episode, episode 8, it's really it's the last episode of the series. We're tentatively calling it Lamplight. And the last episode of the series is we want to deal singularly with solutions. Here's what we mean by that. You've gone with us on this journey of 7 one-hour episodes where we've really framed this problem up for you. We have defined it, we've codified it, we've explained it, and we've given you stories that thematically represents the gravitas of it. So now what are we going to do? And in episode 8, Lamplight, is when we begin to move towards solutions. But one of the things that I want to say as it relates to episode 8 and to the series is that we have to create an infrastructure so that people who, now that they have learned about this, that there's a place for them to go. It isn't, with the power of film, the power of visual storytelling is that it can raise the light on issues. But raising the light on issues without any conduit, without any infrastructure to begin to resolve those issues, because when people learn about this, when people finish watching this series, I assure you, people are going to be like, okay, what can I do?
Right.
How can I get
Right.
involved? Where do I go to do something?
We hope so, yes.
Exactly. I want to do something about this, because the way that we're going to present this story, it's just, it's going to be more than just a classic documentary storytelling paradigm of interview and then, B-roll, contextual footage and music, blah, blah, blah. One of the ways that we work as a company is that we seek, because fundamentally we're narrative storytellers. So what we want to do is to conjoin, it's to blend, it's to mingle the aspects of narrative filmmaking with documentary storytelling. So there's going to be narrative scenes that feel like a movie, that are thematically integrated and infused into each one of the episodes. And that will add to the power inherent in the episode. And when people see that, they're going to want to act. And what we believe that's different about all the other films and documentaries that have been made about infant mortality and maternal morbidity is that it ended with the show being over. People watched it and like, oh man,
It's terrible.
that's jacked up. All those black babies are dying. All those black moms are dying. Man, okay, well, what
What's
else
for
is on
dinner?
TV now?
Mhm.
Yeah, what are
Yeah.
we going to eat for dinner?
Mhm.
Are we going to Eatsy's? I mean, what are we doing next?
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes something that in that moment in time, everybody's amped up about,
Mm-hmm.
but there's no lasting, there's no process in place so that we can take that energy that's been created
Mm-hmm.
and channel that energy into a systemic cultural change that influences black infant mortality and maternal deaths over the long haul.
Mm-hmm.
So our goal with the series, first of all, and then with episode 8, is to be able to say, now that you've danced with us now, and now that the dance is now over, here's where we're going to go to continue being together.
Mm-hmm.
And where we're going to go is into this process for here's the infrastructure. Okay, you want to do something in your zip codes about access denied. You were moved by the fact that there's young women that can't get to prenatal care.
Right.
And you're bothered by that. And you know that the bus lines or the public transportation in your community, it's all kind of jacked up and wacky, or there's no way for them to get there. Well, you want to do something in your community that helps to deal with that particular aspect of the problem. Great. Here's how to do that on a community by community basis.
Mm-hmm.
Here's how to do that in this county. Here's how to do that in this zip code. So the goal then is to be able to take the power of visual storytelling, blended and linked to narrative filmmaking, to take those two ideals that are artistic in nature and link them to, here's a process for you to take your passion and to move that passion toward action.
Mm-hmm.
Because if information alone, if metrics alone were enough,
This would have been fixed a long time ago.
yeah, it would have been fixed in 1925.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I
Just-
think you're right. I don't know if you saw the piece that CBS Sunday Morning did yesterday morning. They did a piece about this very issue. It started with the maternal mortality rate, just in general, not just black folks. The last part of it dealt with just the black maternal death rate. I said that wrong, but anyway, you know what I mean. And it was moving. In fact, I posted it on our Facebook page. But again, at the end, there were no solutions. There wasn't any way to get involved. There wasn't any way to act. And I think you're right that is the piece that's missing, because we do get excited about it and
You
heard,
might even
and we-
tell a friend,
Yeah.
but it kind of
and
just stops
and
there.
we'll share it on Facebook
Yeah.
like I did, and it'll just get a million views, but no action. So you're right. That's the piece that's missing. It's like, okay, now what? We all know that this is going on. Now what?
Yeah, you guys, you are exactly right, and I underscore that emphatically. The making people aware of something is not enough to move people toward doing anything about it. What that requires is a paradigm shift that moves the issues around black infant mortality and maternal morbidity. It moves them to a place where this is now part of our culture. You know, recently, Ryan and I, Ryan arranged it for us, actually. We spoke at the 100 Black Fathers campaign. Ryan, is that right?
Yes, sir. Devin Davis's Proof Coalition.
Yep.
Black Fathers campaign.
Proof Coalition, 100 Black Fathers campaign. And they invited me to come and speak, Nakia Lawson and I, to come and speak there and talk through this, talk about this. And one of the things that was so important about that event is that we got to get dads involved in this. I was excited about speaking at the 100 Black Fathers campaign, because the more that we can get black fathers involved in the issues surrounding black infant mortality, the quicker that this is going to migrate from the, oh, dang, it is so jacked up that all those black babies are dying, to a place where it's part of our culture. Everybody this is being raised a level in terms of the list of priorities. It's now become top of mind. And, we were out in Tyler speaking, I think, when were we in Tyler, like last month or month before last? I forget.
Before last, yep.
Yeah, we were out in Tyler speaking. And one of the things that we said in Tyler is that, if you're black fathers in the community, black men in the community, whether you're a father or not, or a grandfather, looking at the black infant mortality rates, start accepting responsibility for helping all the infants that are in your zip code. You know, whether you're related to them by blood or not, and which is why we chose the title for our website, 365plus1.org. Man, there's a lot of things that make it really hard on black kids to be successful in our society.
No, I'm going to stop you right there because we're going to have to take another break. When we come back, I want us to spend a little bit of time talking about the part that racism plays in this whole issue. I don't think we really talked about that as much as I'd like to, but we've got to take a quick break.
Yes, so we'll be back after a short break, but before we do, we want to give a shout out to All in the Nest doulas. When it's time to grow your family, you only want the best in caregivers. All across the DFW area, families like yours are choosing All in the Nest doulas for support throughout the childbirth process. This mother and daughter team sets the highest standard in loving care. If you'd like to know more about the services offered by All in the Nest doulas, including their exciting new childbirth classes and how they can help you before, during, and after your delivery, be sure to check out their website at allinthenestdoulas.com or on their Facebook page. And now we will take that break. We will be back with Lindell Singleton and Ryan Singleton in about 7 minutes. And just another reminder that you will hear nothing, silence, during the break if you're listening on Facebook. So we'll see you in about 7 minutes.
Welcome back to Natural Parenting Talk with Lauren Akima. We are here with Lindell Singleton and Ryan Singleton discussing their project, The Gap, an 8-part documentary series about Black infant mortality and Black maternal morbidity. And we left off with Lindell talking about men and your message to men where this issue is concerned.
Yeah, which I just wanted to say, I just think it's so important for this message to come from a man because, specifically thinking or talking about this subject, so many times it's a woman's voice that's, talking about this. But to hear it come from a man, it just really makes you pay attention, and it's more powerful, I think. So I think, it's really great what you're doing, what you both are doing. And it's just, yeah, it definitely makes you want to listen for sure.
Thank you. Do you want to ask me that question again, or do you just want me to start talking? What do you want me to do? Because I have a lot of words, so if you want me to start talking,
He
I can.
is a man of words.
I have a lot of words.
Why don't you just talk specifically? I know during the break we talked a little bit that you have a special message for men.
Absolutely.
And let me say that. Let me interrupt for a second because my sister
Hey,
is
Auntie H.
listening. I'm going to tell this story just really, really quick. Hey, Holly. So Lindell and I met, and then in a conversation, we learned that he actually went to school with my sister in South Central LA, and actually had a crush on my sister.
It's all coming out the wash.
Yeah. So I'm putting all your business out there.
Yeah, man.
But Holly said you are representing South Central very well. Hi, Lindell. Bret Hart Strong.
Bret
Woo
Hart
woo.
Strong.
That was their junior high school.
Yes,
so
indeed.
okay. So now the shenanigans are out of the way. We can come back to the question.
Just ask her how she could go like a whole school year, like sitting next to me and never even talk to me, and crush me in the 7th grade.
Auntie
Me
H.
and Clarence Jackson
That's my sister.
crushed us, man. Crushed our little 7th grade egos at Bret Hart. That was funny. That was really funny.
It's a good thing he forgot about that.
Yeah, I know. I know.
It's a Scorpio way.
40-some years later.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, so your message to men.
Message to men. That's somewhat ostentatious, really, to put it out there as a message to men. I will say that when we go out and conduct the town halls, and so I'm going to have a bit of a preamble, which is why we're doing these town halls. And Nakia Lawson, I mentioned before, Natural Way Birthing Project, and Dr. Talon Simmons of the University of Texas Arlington, who's an associate professor there or an adjunct. We go around the state, different locations, and we have town halls in communities, normally in connection with an NAACP unit. And the goal is to just talk about Black infant mortality, maternal morbidity, and then to look at the specific metrics that are present in that county. Because the way to resolve this, the series is going to create a national dialogue, which is good.
Mm-hmm.
But to resolve this, it is our position, or we assert, that it has to be resolved regionally, county by county, zip code by zip code. That's where we feel that the actual resolution needs to occur or should occur. So with that preamble out of the way, we were speaking down in Smith County in Tyler as guests of the Tyler NAACP and Black Nurses Rock of Smith County. And one of the things that I said was, as Black men, we have to accept our role in this area of Black infant mortality and our role in the resolution of it. And this is what I mean. Some of the data, and I want to preface this by saying that the data is kind of all over the place in terms of specifics. However, when you look at the gender of the Black infants that don't make it to their first birthday, it's 50. Some data has indicated that it's 55-45 male to female infants. Some data has indicated that it's as high as 65-35. Black boys not making it to their first birthday as opposed to Black females. So this is
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Any way you parse this data, whether it's 55-45, whether it's 65-35 or higher,
The boys aren't making it.
the boys ain't making it.
And we need boys.
The boys ain't making them. So
That's crazy.
what I have thought through, and Ryan has certainly helped me think this through, is we have to, in aggregate, black men in aggregate, have to, in their communities, in their zip codes, in their communities, whatever, have to say, I've got to take responsibility for an infant getting to his or her first birthday. So we titled our website 365plus1.org, you know, because I was saying before the break, life is hard on black boys.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard on black females,
It is.
black girls. I'm here to tell you, I can give you a whole lot of stories about how hard it is on black girls. But life is especially hard on black boys.
Mm-hmm.
Parenthetical point, I was doing some work with an organization about 5 years ago. We're shooting a short film for them. And this was an agency that helps to get...
Hold your thought. Hang on, caller. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
It was an agency that helps to get black children placed into foster homes. And again, this is, you know, filmmaking for me is such a journey because it gives me an outlet for my OCD, and I can just start digging into something and just start figuring out. So anyway, gist of the story is this. This woman who places black children that are in the child care system, they're in foster care, gets them into adoptive families. She looked at me and said, if you're a black male child over the age of 3, you have a higher probability of getting kidnapped by an alien than you do getting out of the foster care system and getting into an adoptive family. I was like, what? And she says, I'm telling you, nobody wants black male children over the age of 3 years old.
How sad is that?
She said, she said nobody wants them. They stand a better chance once they hit their 3rd birthday of getting kidnapped by aliens than they do of getting out of the system and getting into an adoptive family.
Wow.
And now, whether that was hyperbole or not, the impact of what she said, it crushed my little heart. And I'm thinking how sad this is for these boys that are going to grow up without knowing that there's somebody that wants me.
That's incredible. Okay. Caller, are you there? Hello.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hi.
Hello.
Welcome.
How you doing? I know these two gentlemen
Oh my God.
intimately,
The dawn.
but I do have a question. First of all, I want to say I'm partners with Lindell Singleton, and I'm very proud of this project. But I do have a question that he and I haven't even discussed. What is the action items for people in the community? What can they do? What can everyday working folk do to help this issue?
Well, I would say to that, Mr. Hollis, and let me just say to you that that King and I have been partners and friends for probably a quarter of a century, and he is, without a doubt, the most gifted filmmaker that I've ever met in my life.
Oh, wow.
Extraordinarily talented. Glad to call him a partner and a friend. I would say to you, why don't you just talk very briefly, if it's okay with the host, about your vision for the 16-block plan and how that we could overlay the 16-block paradigm over the regional and zip code work that we should be doing with black infant mortality and maternal morbidity.
We have a friend and partner in LA, Manny Archie, who was developing a concept for renewal, and I was developing it at the same time, and we had no idea that we were mutually working on the same thing. He titled his working title for his initiative was called 16 Blocks, which is 1 square mile. My idea was to do a lifestyle ecosystem for poor communities. We would go and basically add vegetation to the deserts, if you will. We would add clinics and food sources, transportation sources, We would do lifestyle incentives with residential leasings, where if you met certain lifestyle requirements in your lease. Let me back up. The lifestyle kind of leases is what we call them. In other words, your rent is $900. If your kids' grades are certain at a certain level, if your blood work comes out a certain way with health, like cholesterol, sugar, if certain lifestyle mandates are met, you can lower your rent every month. It's literally in your lease. And in the community, in each of these development communities, they are half residential and half commerce. The concept is that the 1 square mile, you develop that 16 blocks at a time. So you would have the commerce area where you infuse businesses. And in that commerce area, you have to have a credit union or bank. You have to have a charter school. You have to have a market, fresh food-based market. And you have to have a clinic. And you have to have a learning center that caters to not only children, but adults.
That's an interesting concept.
For credits, in the learning center, we say, what is a learning center? Well, a learning center, how do you get a job? Filling out a job application, understanding personal credit, understanding banking systems, things that it teaches economic literacy and basic lifestyle literacy, some things that are deplete in our communities. So these are kind of the mandates for now outside of that, in the commerce world, it can be any type of business that works for the demographic, any type of business that works for the area. So this development concept is within that, things like what Lindell was talking about. You implement that in the learning center. You have a huge presence with this in the clinic, and this is a top to bottom ecosystem kind of design that is by the way not nonprofit. It is all for profit.
Right.
And what we're doing is we're looking for African American private equity stakeholders,
right,
to go in to change these ecosystems so that, and we think that actually making it a profit driven entity actually gets us in more doors than a nonprofit entity. And so, one of the things is, I knew generally that the infant mortality, of course, as most things in our country, we are at the bottom of the conversation when it comes to this issue. The details that Lindell uncovered, I had no idea. And I think that implementing things like what we're talking about with the 16 blocks format, what we're trying to do is educate with action. So every time we, educate ourselves and educate the populace, what can we do? And, that was kind of the basis of the question is, what we're doing is something that, it's an initiative that we're going to have a lot of stakeholders in to play. But, what can we do in the community right now? Because I think that the commerce of effort is something that we've kind of forgotten about in our communities.
Right.
To get up every day and say, what can I do to make a difference? Lindell and I have started, projects like these because we said, well, what can we do? Well, we're storytellers, we're filmmakers, so let's give our commerce of effort and apply to this. And maybe that starts a snowball effect with these issues. We have something on medical apartheid, which Lindell we need to talk about. We have something on police brutality. We have something on child infant mortality. We're working with, we've done a piece on Flint, Michigan that we've been working on for 2 years. So we said to ourselves, how can we get involved and push these narratives, starting with information, starting with storytelling, getting this out in the masses, and then attaching some type of lane where people can get involved every day.
Right. Very interesting.
And so, anyways, I just want to say I'm proud to work with these guys. Ryan, we're going to celebrate your belated birthday very soon. Prepare yourself. And ladies, I love your show.
Thank you.
And Lindell took me to the very street he grew up on. And I was there, so I got a little sense of all that.
So you've been
but
to
this
the
is a great show, and I love what you guys are doing.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for calling in, too.
All right, Mr. House.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye.
I just wanted to say one thing, going back to the call to action of black men. Like, we're not bashing black men. We're not saying, y'all ain't, blah,
Right.
blah, blah. We're just saying if this is going to change, it's going to start with us. It needs to start with us.
Right,
you know?
right.
We're not hating or nothing like that, but that's just what it is.
Right, right. And like you said, like Lauren said, you tend to hear women talking about these issues a whole lot more than men, and men should be talking about it too. So,
You're exactly right, and that's, and I'm glad that that King called in, specifically relating to the issue of cause to action, and as we talked about in Tyler, it's, and the phraseology that we used was simply join the Reformation, and the Reformation is in every community, and even if it breaks down to, as what Hollis talked about, the kind of the 16 block paradigm, which is kind of a strategic model that we've been working through to kind of sort through developing these ecosystems that we believe that will work. Even if it comes down to, I know someone in the community that needs help, help getting to prenatal care, help getting the child to well baby care. Anything that you can do, no matter how seemingly insignificant that it might be, to help get a child to his or her first birthday, then let's do it.
let's do it.
Let's accept this as a community responsibility for all the kids in my community. We want to get these kids to their first birthday. We're trying to get them past their first birthday.
Okay.
We got a group call going. We have 2 callers right now.
Okay, caller, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Hi. Welcome to the show. Did you have a question?
Yes, I am.
Can you silence your phone, please, or your computer?
Yes, I'm here.
Did you have a question, ma'am?
Yes, I would like to ask Lindell a question.
Can you silence your computer? We're hearing the
feedback.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Is that better?
Yes.
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask Lindell, or to mention a suggested idea. This is Glenda Johnson, and to let him know that perhaps he should talk to or get senior citizen mothers or senior citizens, women and men, involved in doing something to make this idea come to pass, that we could do something as well as the younger folks. And he should tap on that door, too.
It's a good idea, Glenda. It's a really good idea. Actually, I hadn't thought about that, so that's superb.
Okay, we have another caller. Hello, caller.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine. This is Nakia.
Oh, hi. Hi, Nakia.
What's up, Nakia?
How are you?
Sister
What's up? Okay, so just so you guys know, I absolutely adore Lindell, and I adore what is going on in this Reformation and the movement and the work that he's doing, and the team that he's putting together to make sure that this message resonates. Because we have our little running. It's not even a joke anymore. It's just really part of the conversation that this has to be seen. Like they used to say back in the day, the revolution has to be televised. The revolution will be televised. The Reformation will be televised. And the more that we see the necessity for what is going on in our communities, the more we're going to impact change. I appreciate and applaud Lindell. I appreciate and applaud Crunchy Boutique, Kima, and Lauren for being the change that you want to see in this world. You all are representative of the change that will happen by continuing to have the conversations and utilizing your platform to make sure that the message resonates. So thank you, and I appreciate you.
Well, thank you so much for calling in. Thank you. We appreciate you too.
Absolutely.
Okay. And I want to say to the prior caller, I apologize. We've not had a lot of practice with switching back and forth from calls, so I hung up on you accidentally. That was not intentional, but thank you for calling in also.
Yeah, let me just say a note about the previous caller. Her name is Glenda Johnson, and Glenda has an organization called Medical Wings, and Glenda has led over 100 medical humanitarian missions around the country over the last 20 years.
Oh, wow.
She has been from Palestine to India to Haiti to Central America to the Philippines. And in fact, just 3 Sundays ago when it was 110 degrees, her organization, Medical Wings, another organization out of Fort Worth called Love and Light Ministry, we partnered with them to have a humanitarian medical mission to the elderly, homeless veterans, and some of the street people that live in Fort Worth. So, Glenda has been, boots on the ground for years, trying to make a difference in the lives of folks. And
wow,
I
that's
certainly
wonderful.
Yeah,
appreciate her calling in.
And you know what I think that says too is that I think there are a lot of people in this country who really do want to do something to affect change. I think people in their hearts really do want to help in some way. And that's why I guess we keep going back to this running theme today of what can we do? And I don't know that we're necessarily at that point to be able to enumerate the things that people can do, but we have to get there so that when people ask that question, what can I do to help, that we are instant with a response of what that is. And I know that it's because we're talking about the Black issues, but there are a lot of non-Black folks who want to help as well, and we need to be able to give them an answer as well. And we, because of Crunchy Boutique and because of our clientele, we get those questions often from non-Black people because they hear that we're talking about these things. They hear the show or they hear us talking about it or what have you, and they ask us, what can we do? And at this point, we don't really have an answer. But like you keep saying, I mean, your eighth part, I look forward to that because we need to have an answer, for people who ask that question. It's like
that's really powerful what you said, and it does require all of us. There's 2 things I want to mention to really underscore that. The first is Black infant mortality numbers are bad. Now, traditionally, when you look at the metrics, the numbers for what's labeled as Caucasian or Hispanic numbers for Black Hispanic numbers for infant mortality have traditionally been comparable to Caucasian numbers. But when you look at the last 5 years, and I was actually talking to someone about this morning, when you look at the last 5 years, you're starting to see the numbers for Hispanic, for Latin kids that don't make it to their first birthday, they're starting to creep higher and higher when you examine those numbers by zip code. When you look at the numbers of Native American infant mortality, what you'll find is that those numbers track pretty consistently from a metric standpoint to African American numbers. So, our focus on this series is about Black infant mortality. That's the story that we've chosen to tell. But we would be remiss if we did not say that this is larger than an African American issue. Absolutely. It's just like that with most health issues in America, is Black people that are on the tip of the spear that are getting the worst of it for most health issues. But that does not diminish in any way that infant mortality and maternal morbidity and maternal death certainly has broad impact on greater society, and it should be addressed from that perspective as well.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're gonna take another break, and when we come back, we're gonna switch reels a little bit and talk about Black breastfeeding.
Yes.
Cool. If that's okay.
Welcome back to Natural Parenting Talk with Lauren and Kima. We are here with Lindell Singleton and Ryan Singleton discussing their project, The Gap, an 8-part documentary series about black infant mortality and black maternal morbidity. And I should be able to say that without reading it at this point. But we are going to now talk a little bit about black breastfeeding because I know that you have a project that you're working on in that regard also. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Okay, let's do that. And you guys will have to chime in a lot because this is really your world from a technical standpoint.
Okay, well,
And we're ju-
so let me frame it a little bit before
right,
you say that.
please.
Then. Okay.
How it
Thank
ties
you.
in.
Yes.
For those of you who do not know, which everybody should know at this point because we've said it a million times, this is National Breastfeeding Month. We just had the big latch on Saturday, which was it was actually Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in some places, where women around the world latched at the same time, simultaneously, all around the world. They were trying to beat the previous year's record. There were, at this point, I think there were close to 20,000 women who latched at the same time. And then the last week in August, which Lauren mentioned earlier today, is Black Breastfeeding Week. So this is a big month for breastfeeding altogether, but particularly because we're Black, we're a little bit more interested, obviously, in Black breastfeeding, and because there's a crisis in that area as well.
And because many believe that breastfeeding may be the key to lower the numbers of the Black infants that are dying, they believe that's connected in some way.
Okay. So now it's your turn. Go.
That was a great lead in. Thank you for framing that up. All right, here's kind of the through line then, based upon that great frame up that you guys just did for us. The frame up is in episode 8 of our series, which is called Lamplight, and it's the gap. Episode 8, we're going to deal with solutions. What can you do? And as we were thinking through the issue of solutions, Nakia Lawson, who called in during the last segment, Nakia just started talking about breastfeeding as being one of the solutions, as Lauren just so eloquently stated. So I did not understand that, but Nakia said, you've got to meet Kima and you've got to meet Lauren at Crunchy Boutique, because they're kind of in this world of breastfeeding. They're talking about it. They're advancing this cause locally. So that's how I ended up, as you know, meeting you guys and kind of getting on this journey. So that's kind of the backstory there that I think is essential. As it relates to the show, breastfeeding is one of the solutions to help deal with Black infant mortality. And we are creating a documentary series, which Ryan's going to talk about here in a little bit, which is called Birthright: Black Mamas, Black Dads, and Breastfeeding. And the goal of the series is to, first of all, as we do with all of our series, is to frame up the world as it exists now. This is where we are. There's no going forward until you kind of get a clear picture of this is where we are right now. You know, we have a saying, King Hollis has said this a number of times. I've stolen it from him. And that saying is, a man must first conquer the ground beneath his feet. So to conquer the ground beneath your feet, you need to understand where you are.
I like that.
So our goal is first to paint this picture of kind of where we are right now with breastfeeding. And one of the things that, you know, Kima has said and Nakia said it first is I think that Nakia in her style said Black women aren't breastfeeding nearly as much as they could or should. And when you look at the numbers, the numbers are significantly reduced. And the question then began as why? Why are those numbers significantly reduced? And there was and we assert just from our research, and we're digging more into this, that there is a connection that goes back to the concept of wet nursing from slavery and all the psychological and emotional baggage that came as a result of that, as to why there's a bit of reticence perhaps today, you know, for Black women to aggressively move forward with that. So with that out of the way, you know, our goal is to create an 8-part documentary series for a streaming service that's going to A, kind of frame up where we are now, and B, we're going to identify 3 stories that we're going to follow over the course of season 1 that just kind of tell the story about, this is how my adventure has been and I did do it. This is how my adventure has been and I didn't do it. And this is kind of what that has meant to me and my family. So that's where we are right now. Ryan, do you want to jump in here since you're joining?
Jump in, Ryan.
You're joining this as one of our story producers on this series.
Yeah, sure. I mean, this is very important because, you know, people who don't do that natural breastfeeding, you know, they're kids kind of grow up, with not the same advantages as they would, the people with formulas and all that stuff. So, and I got people, coworkers who, they're just starting to have kids. They just had kids, and some are all about the breastfeeding and some aren't. And I'm trying to, let them know you need to be more about the breastfeeding,
And I bet that's interesting coming from you, a man, for a man to say, you need to breastfeed. You need to at least try.
Right.
Yeah.
And and there's some people who can't, they can't breastfeed. I guess they can't. So we have a little network of people at work. Some people's wives will just keep pumping, freeze it, and then give it to them. So we're gonna get in touch with them and have them tell their stories too. We got some newborns on the way. We're gonna get them on camera, try and convince them, this is what you guys need to do. So it's very important.
Yeah, I know I say this all the time that I never breastfed either of my children. I never even gave it a thought. In the hospital, they brought formula right away, and I never, ever thought about it. So fast forward to Lauren having August, and she never, ever thought about formula. I mean, she fought through every possible thing that could go wrong in her breastfeeding journey she's had to deal with. But she has that mindset where she's just has tunnel vision. She's determined in everything she approached breastfeeding the same way she does everything, where I'm going to do this. So it's been inspiring for me to watch, and as a result, everybody that walks through the doors at Crunchy Boutique, when they're pregnant, that's one of the first things we ask, white, black, or whatever. We always ask that question, are you going to breastfeed? Just hoping that answer is going to be yes. And we've had several group meetings and support groups and things like that to help encourage women, because that's a big key to success of breastfeeding is support, and having a group of people that you can talk to, and just somebody to give you that attaboy, you could do it.
And having that conversation before your child gets here,
right?
Already knowing, like I knew with my son, I'm breastfeeding him. I knew that when I was pregnant. It wasn't something where after I had him, it was like, well, formula, breast milk. I already knew what I was going to do.
Or like your mom, they just gave her formula.
Yeah.
Like, here, this is how you.
Yeah, which is so common. Even to today. I mean, they automatically bring you the formula, the Pampers, all that stuff.
Right.
So it's very important to know what you're going to do before your baby comes.
And how did you get to that place, Lauren, where you made that decision before your child was born?
I actually thought about it, or I knew I was going to go that route very early on in my pregnancy. And then I took the Bradley Method birthing classes, and it was kind of reinforced because I didn't know all the amazing benefits of breastfeeding. I just knew I wanted to do it. Then when I started learning just how incredible breast milk truly is, how it's a living substance, how it changes, how my breast milk is formulated for my baby, I was like, there is nothing that compares to this. But I still hadn't had that conversation with my caregiver. It wasn't until I spoke about this on the show, is that it wasn't until I had a private ultrasound with Makiba, who owns Ultraview Imaging here in Arlington. And she just asked me, like, have you thought about breastfeeding? It's like, wow, this is the first time somebody in this medical field has
no
even
doctor ever asked.
And I wasn't very early in my pregnancy. I mean, I had lots of opportunities for people to speak with me about breastfeeding, but it had never happened until that moment.
So we know that we need to be in a place other than the doctor's office, obviously, where we're talking to women about breastfeeding.
Because that may be their first time or their only time to have that conversation, to have that thought come across their head, like, oh, okay, maybe I will, give this a try.
What has this support been like from your husband or your significant other and your family? How has that support helped you along the way?
You're thinking about DeAndre? My husband is he's very like militant when it comes to breastfeeding. If I'm breastfeeding in public, he's like, I got you. Anybody wants
I dare somebody to say something.
Because breastfeeding in public can be, especially if you're early on, it can be kind of awkward to kind of figure it out because you're learning your latch and your baby's learning and all of that.
And that's the whole normalizing.
Yeah, but he's very much like, we're going to normalize this. This is normal for my wife to be doing this and all of that. Everybody in my family has been really supportive. I will say that after 6 months, they were kind of still like, "You're still doing this, huh?" Not all of them, just a couple people were like, "Oh,
Yeah, she
we're
gets
still
people because August is almost, he'll be 2 in November.
in November, and we're still breastfeeding."
So people now are looking like it's
right.
about time to bring that 2 in.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we say this all the time too, that Cookie, she's been on our show as well. She has lived off and on in Nigeria. I think I told you the story how in Nigeria, when you register your child for kindergarten, they ask you if you're still breastfeeding your child or not. And if you are, then the child only goes half day, or they allow you, the mother, to come in and breastfeed at midday.
The bottom line is a 5-year-old nursing is completely normal and accepted. It's here in America that, it's so, breasts are so sexualized and it's looked at as like this weird thing that you're doing with your child, or
because
like somebody told me just put it in a cup for him. Like, okay, it's not.
Because they see it as sexual.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, which it isn't. And the nutrients and benefits, they don't start deteriorating as your child gets older. I mean, it's still beneficial.
Right.
It's still healthy, nutritious, all of that. I mean, all the stuff
and
is
he
still there.
obviously likes it.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, yeah, my son has teeth, and he's actually saying milk,
Right.
pulling at my shirt, all that stuff. But
How much does your diet play into this? Because we're still researching this, so this is kind of new to me.
how much does diet play into breastfeeding?
Yeah, like yours. Into
Like, are you talking about like supply?
Yeah, no, like what do you need to eat? What do you need to drink to make sure the nutrients that your child is getting is optimal?
Yeah. Well, nutrition definitely plays a huge role. But your child, just like when you're pregnant, they'll get the nutrients that they need, which is, unfortunately proved to the detriment of myself. Earlier on, actually had to go to the emergency room because I wasn't taking care of myself
At all.
Yeah. So, I mean, your baby's going to get what they need, but your nutrition is also important so that you remain healthy. And water intake is also important as well.
Yeah.
So you guys talk about, or you were talking about, Lauren, about normalizing it, and I think, Kima, you have a shirt on about normalizing it. At what point in time did it become abnormal? How did this flip occur when it became like, okay, we're not doing this anymore?
And you know the answer to that. Dollars. Formula dollars.
Yeah. Yeah, formula dollars. And I mean, even growing up, nobody in my family really breastfed. I believe my aunt did for a few months, but as far as, exclusively extended breastfeeding, I have no example to look at. And I remember, you remember that Time magazine that came out several years ago of this woman breastfeeding her son, and he's like standing on a stool.
He was like, probably 3.
Yeah. And I mean, I remember looking at that being like, oh my gosh.
There was public outrage.
Yeah.
That this woman had the audacity to breastfeed her 3-year-old son.
Yeah.
Everybody they bashed her, and because they see breasts. We Americans see breasts as sexual as opposed to what they were meant for.
Nurture.
Yeah, which is crazy looking back at my old self back then, because I was the one that was like, that's gross. Why are you doing that? You don't need to do that. But now, I mean, I don't see anything wrong with it. I mean, like I said, you'll give your child cow's milk, but you won't give your child your own breast milk. I mean,
makes no sense.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, so going back to your show, because we kind of flipped it.
I know.
We're being interviewed now. We got to flip this back over there to your side.
You're helping me with my research right now.
Because I do want to talk more about the series. I know that we mentioned earlier you've got casting coming up, and so what's your vision for this documentary series?
Well, here's the vision. This is where we'd like to get to, and this is where we're certainly inviting yourself or your listeners to help us, really. One of the things that all of us know who watch television, watch documentary series, is that it's the reason you tune in every week is you tune in because, number one, the series, if it's any good, it's going to take you into a world that you heretofore just had no concept about that world as it existed, number one. And then number two, it's about are the characters compelling? Who are these people? And why should I be concerned about their journey? And even if you don't like them, if they're compelling enough, you're probably going to be interested enough to kind of sort through what happens to them. So one of the things that we're looking for is people who have a interest in having their story about breastfeeding told. That could be a mom who maybe had a child 10 years ago and never thought about breastfeeding that child, but this child 10 years later, they're going to breastfeed the child, and what's the difference between the two? It could be a story like you described, Lauren, a person who had the paradigm shift during a pregnancy and has just kind of seen this all the way through, even though there's sometimes when, people are like, well, what are you doing because your child is 2 years old? So what I see you doing is your boots on the ground, normalizing it by showing people that, this is the right thing to do, and I'm going to continue to do it, even though in your aberrant worldview, you may find it offensive, but the greater good is it's not offensive. So I'm going to be the change that I want to see in the world. So in terms of casting, we're looking for people that have an interesting breastfeeding story. And
we have another caller.
Okay.
We've got a caller. Hello, caller. How are you?
Hello, it's Nikki again. You don't have to put me on the air if need be. Just wanted to share. Black Breastfeeding Week is coming up, and you guys are talking all this wonderful information about Black breastfeeding, and would love to know about Black Breastfeeding Week activities that you guys are sponsoring.
We actually mentioned that at the top of the show, but we'll say again that we are having a Black Breastfeeding Week forum and luncheon on Saturday, August 25th. And we are having chocolate
milk and cookies, as well as the breastfeeding party on Friday, August 31st.
Yeah. And all of that information is on our Facebook page, on Crunchy Boutique's Facebook page. So if anybody's interested, you can look for the events there. We are combining the event, which we haven't fixed on Facebook yet. We're combining the chocolate milk and cookies event with our Black breastfeeding party. So instead of having 3 events, we're having 2. One on Saturday, the first day, and then one on Friday, the last day.
Awesome. I look forward to sharing all that information with our community of moms, and I will be there on Friday night.
Okay, great.
We appreciate you.
Thank you. Okay.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Okay, and we are so running out of time. Time is going by so fast. It's just crazy. We had a comment from Jennifer, who wants to know how she can support your work.
Contact us. That's probably the simplest way to do that. And
can you provide your general contact information, your website, how you can be found on social media?
Oh, absolutely. If you want to follow the work that we're doing, you can visit 365plus1.org, and that's a website that we're curating all of our content that we're involved in terms of the town halls, but also essential information about the work that we're doing with Black infant mortality and maternal morbidity.
Is it one spelled out or the number 1?
One spelled out.
Okay.
Yeah.
365plus1.org.
365plus1.org.
Okay.
You can go there.
I just put it in the comments.
I appreciate that. And if you're interested in Birthright, the documentary series, it's just email Ryan, and Ryan, you can give out your email address.
That would be ryan@sagasemediagroup.com.
You're going to have to spell
Sagase. Sounds so nice. Sagase, S-E-G-A-S-A-G-A-S.
Come on now.
Media Group.
.com. Lord have mercy. Help him, Jesus. Okay.
Yeah, he's just
sorry, I'm nervous.
being funny.
I think I messed it up.
No, you got it.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
Yeah. So just if you're interested in just having a conversation with us about what kind of time commitment will be involved in casting, what would this be like? How up in my business are you really going to be if I decide I want to do this? If you just have general questions about this, then just reach out to Ryan, and then we'll talk to you about it, and we want to hear your story, and then we're going to cast 3 moms or 3 families, and we're just going to follow them over the course of a couple weeks, and just present that story. And the goal, the premise of it is, if we all agree that breastfeeding has tremendous benefits to the mom, tremendous benefit to the child, tremendous benefits emotionally, and we're choosing not to do it, then the question is why? That's the premise of the series. We want to get to that why. We all agree it's the right thing to do. Okay, finding why you're not doing it.
Wow. This time went by so fast.
It did.
We say this every time.
Are we out of, am I out of time?
We're out of time.
Whoa,
and we have another caller.
Okay, we're going to take this call really, really quick.
Okay, because I still got one more thing to talk about. It's absolutely essential.
Hello, caller?
Hi. I'm listening to your show. I don't know if we can ask a question.
Sure.
Oh, thank you very much. My name is Ana Cristina, and he's just talking about breastfeeding and how important that is and how we all agree with that. But I don't know if you guys heard about the Trump administration working with the World Health Organization and literally blackmailing. You did?
Yes,
did you bring that up? I just joined it late.
We didn't talk about it on today's show, but we spoke about it a couple weeks ago when it came out.
Yeah, it was terrible.
And it goes right with this.
Yes, it does.
You know, we have entrenched. We have a system that is set up to perpetuate this. This is another form of cultural and racial genocide.
Yes, it is.
It's just another way of doing the same thing. But I don't know how we go beyond this.
Well, you know what? We're going to have a part 2.
Yes,
So,
yes, definitely.
If you don't follow Natural Parenting Talk with Lauren Akima, do so on Facebook and Instagram.
I did. I just signed up for that.
We're going to have Lindell and Ryan come back because unfortunately we were out of time. But thank you so much for your call.
You're welcome. Tell him it's Ana Cristina. Tell Lindell it's Ana Cristina. And thank you guys for what you're doing. I'm following you. And if you have a call to action, I'm signing up.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
All righty.
Oops. Okay. Okay, again, we're out of time. I hope everybody got your contact information. We're going to have you come back for sure. Everybody, please remember Crunchy Boutique, the natural parenting store in Arlington, Texas, and online. Crunchy Boutique will be introducing a new diaper line by West Coast Dipes on this Saturday, Saturday, August 11th. Join us for the launch party and trunk show from noon to 2 p.m. Central Time in store and via Facebook Live. You'll want to attend and see the beautiful diaper prints and merchandise that will be available starting on August 11th. Thank you to our listeners and Facebook Live viewers. Be sure to catch us each and every Monday from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. on Fishbowl Radio Network on fbrn.us in the green stream, or find us on our Facebook page, Natural Parenting Talk with Lauren Akima. If you'd like to continue on today's conversation, please feel free to comment on the video on Facebook and we will respond. Be sure to tune in next week when we welcome Chantel Johnson of Off Grid in Color. Chantel is a social worker, doula, counselor, and homesteader in North Carolina. We will be discussing homesteading. We've been discussing living off the grid as a family for quite a while now, so we cannot wait to have her on the show. In the meantime, please find her on Instagram at Off Grid in Color so that you'll be familiar with the subject matter. You will not want to miss next week's show. Again, thank you again, Lindell and Ryan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it, y'all.
All right.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you.